used to do the robot?
No, I used to do voguing. Vogue.
Have you seen Madonna? Well, of course you did, because you posted it on your stories. But Madonna's biopic has been scrapped.
Yeah.
So that means Julia Garner's been scrapped. To be honest with you, though, I was never particularly confident about a Madonna biopic directed by Madonna, written by Madonna. And does anyone remember when she posted on her Instagram about it? She had one shot of her with a pen in her mouth on the thing, and then all the other shots were of her bum.
Oh. I don't like biopics made by the person that they're biopicking, because it's going to be so sanitised, isn't it?
But the reason they often happen is it's the only way you can access the music.
So, good morning. Nice to see you. Anybody? Sorry we are later today. We're much later than we usually are, but we had quite a long meeting.
Wonderful Zoom meeting.
We did, with a very, very smart person.
Smarter than me.
He's got the brain the size of a planet.
It's enormous. It's enormous, anyway.
But anyway, lovely to be here with you. If you're new to Coffee Moaning, we are here Mondays through to Saturdays. Saturdays is the newspapers. So Mark has a look through and gets all the best stories. The rest of the days of the week, we do a mixture of news stories and things that interest us or we know, because we do get to know you very well here, that you are going to be interested in. So it's a good old mixture.
Hello, Christine Eddy in Wales.
It's the most TV, not TV show you're going to get.
A bit like the No Name Sunday show, because we couldn't come up with a name for a Sunday show. I remember years ago coming up with the name Something for the Weekend, and I got a phone call from the controller of BBC One saying, you haven't got the contract, but we love your title.
Can we use it without you suing us?
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah. So I said,
We've got the email somewhere.
All
got
right.
the email somewhere.
All right, Jay.
But anyway, let's go.
Hi, Lee. Hope you're feeling a bit better, mate. Hope you're still recovering. All our love still to Ashley. I also understand your dad is recuperating and improving, which is stable. So that's good news. We've got a potpourri. I want to lead with a story that I found quite shocking and distressing and really unpleasant. And this is Matt Hancock. Having been assaulted on London Underground. I believe he got on the tube at Westminster. I don't think there's footage of the assault, but there is footage online, I believe, of the person in question hounding, following, getting onto the tube and harassing Matt Hancock.
Terrifying. And I hate this.
Felt for him so much. When you think of, I forget the name of the Labour MP who was killed.
Oh, Joe
Cox.
Oh God, Joe Cox. Yeah, absolutely tragic.
And it's just like
such a good person, Joe Cox, and her sister. We interviewed her sister on Loose Women. It's just so awful.
It's just a reminder that regardless of who someone is, regardless of what you feel. I think the person is a self-declared anti-vaxxer. So it's like, that is not the way to express how you feel, is it?
Just awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just be horrified if anyone, because obviously a lot of us have very strong feelings about Matt Hancock.
He wasn't assaulted in the footage. Someone just said he wasn't assaulted. But they have arrested someone.
But you see, for me...
And has been charged with assault.
Yeah, but for me, if you're terrifying someone
verbally,
that is assault.
Yeah,
we've all been in those situations, haven't we? But I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't say all, but certainly we will have done many times through our life living in London, where there's the threat that somebody's going to hurt you, and that's just awful. I just think it's ignorant.
And here you have BBC.
Have the debate.
Yeah,
have the debate.
Go
up to him. Well, even on the tube, if you want. If you're a politician and you're amongst the people, say, "Listen, mate, I'm sorry, but and have the conversation, but with no threat of violence." That's really, really wrong.
And again, just to clarify for the person who said no assault was caused, Geza Tarjani, 61, from Leyland, Lancashire, has officially been charged with common assault and 2 public order offences. The British Transport Police have reported. He'll be released on bail.
What's the definition of common assault?
I think you can be manhandled, shoved, pushed.
Right.
Which, to be brutally honest with you, when you're on the tubes in London, it is a really disconcerting and worrying thing. Yeah. There are instances of people sort of being pushed onto the trains, or people losing their footing and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to mention that, because obviously that's in the news, and it's just a reminder of how people's responses to people can just cross a line. so easily. So I feel sorry for Matt Hancock. You can be angry with them, as Aaron Bullimore says. You can be angry with them, but I do think it's uncalled for. One of the stories that we were going to do earlier in the week was the story around Nanny Di. If you're watching, we're going to get honest now, Mum, about food when I was young. Your parents are to blame for your complicated relationship with food. And I'm guessing, Nads, with everything you've done around food, all your discussions about Overeating Anonymous and all that this comes as no surprise. Or does it?
Actually, my parents have a very stable relationship with food. My mum...
They do, actually, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, I say that, but my mum, I don't know if my mum's watching, my mum is terrible in that if ever I say to her, oh, Mum, you look great, you look so slim, she always says to me, what are you talking about? I'm so fat. And she's never been fat.
Yeah, right, okay.
No, why are you saying that? I'm not.
She
we all, and she looks diner and tight. So she's always said that, but she's always had a really sane relationship with food in that she eats a good breakfast, lunch and dinner, and I mean, when we were younger, we all used to go on diets together. We'd do the Scarsdale diet. Actually, when I think about it, we did go on diets, all of us together. But it was those days when everybody used to. But I don't like the word blame in this title. I mean, obviously they've got to do that because I think that we are all, as parents, in a constant state of educating. A good parent is always trying to educate themselves and adjust their behaviours. And, my parents are been great parents. Outside of my immediate family, my cousins, my aunties, my uncles, there was a very, very fucked up relationship with food. So, like, my aunt would cook huge amounts of food and then it would be like, I cooked all day and you didn't eat, and you would feel like you'd wounded her. But then if you ate too much, you'd know that she'd been saying to somebody else, did you see how much they came and ate? So it was a very fucked up relationship with food. I think in a lot of, when I've spoken to, so my father is Arabic, so I'm talking about the Arabic side of the family. And when I talk to a lot of people from a lot of other countries, like Greek friends, Turkish, a lot of Indian people that I spoke to, they all said, oh my God, it was exactly the same in our house. The emotional bargaining around food, very cultural, huge cultural difference in my dad's family and food and my mum's family and food, which was you just ate to stay alive. That was my grandmother on the other side, and you had loads of sweets and you had white bread. And every morning, my mum's mother would have a pile of white toast like that, fried, just cut into triangles, and she'd sit with a big mug of tea with 3 spoonfuls of sugar, and she'd just eat her fried bread and drink her tea and never say a thing about it. Mind you, she died very young.
Laura Lou says, don't you think your mum's generation are like that? Lunch, breakfast, dinner, etc. Our generation, you're 40, Laura, we have been messed up by magazines. And not, you're right, not just magazines, but social media, advertising. Advertising is a huge part of that.
But most people with eating, a lot of people with disordered eating, it has been something that has been said to them directly. Mark's mum worked on an anorexic unit for years, and she said I always remember her saying the amount of girls in there that had been told at some point when they were 7, oh, you've got big thighs, or you've got, we were talking about this the other day when we were talking about the movie Whale, weren't we? These words have enormous power. Somebody messaged the other day when I was talking about this on the live, and they were saying that every single day, her mum would say something about the way she looked and her weight. And that can come from a good intention from a mum. It's not always bad, but it fucks you up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you say, in terms of blame, I think that's the wrong word to use, but you can't dispute that one's relationship with food is a product of our upbringing, which is one of the claims in this article by a psychotherapist who specialises in food and has written a book about food. Just going back to my childhood, I mean, there were moments where I would feel very sort of jangly about certain situations. I'm just being mindful, Mum. Where I felt perhaps alone or kind of things were going on and I know I have a very strong memory of whatever the reasons behind it were, of eating a huge amount of butter almost in one go and being obsessed with it and just sort of thinking, wow. But I mean, like by spoon. And I remember it vividly and in the flat and da-da-da. And I have binged, and I think there is also this other aspect of, I mean, me and my mum often joke about this, that back in the 70s, there would be spliff and all this kind of stuff knocking about. And so whenever snacks were brought into the house, like I specifically will never forget the jam tarts, they would always be gone. And so over the years, I've really developed a sort of, you could argue, only child approach to things, though I hate that. But I have an attitude to food like I need to get it in me quickly. For fear that it won't be there, I guess. But also at the same time, I do stuff and have stuffed because of my emotions. And curiously, in the review that me and Nan did about The Whale, which is going to land soon, the most upsetting part of The Whale were the scenes in which he fed himself in such a visceral and distressing way. I was so surprised how much I related to that. And so, you can be informed both by when you have dinner, you can be informed what you eat, but you can also be informed about how you stuff and emotionally eat.
Erin there just said her mother used to underfeed her, and that's a big thing that she talks about this, doesn't she? In this article about it can also go the other way, that you're not fed enough, there's a chaos in the home, and then food becomes something that's very fraught. The fear of hunger becomes a really real thing. And
a client here says one of my clients learned to stuff herself when she could because she never knew when food would next arrive. Yeah. She couldn't rely on consistency.
I mean, also in OA, which is Overeaters Anonymous, which is for all people with food issues. It's not just for people living with obesity. And it's run in exactly the same way as AA or Cocaine Anonymous. And the amount of people that have been through rehab, addressed their alcohol addictions, addressed their cocaine addictions, and didn't want to address their food issues. And the food issues are the very first one. I've always said this to Mark. I think before alcoholism, it was food. It was that story of him saying he would cut the butter and eat it to comfort his anxiety. And of course, now we've discovered that if you have ADHD, that you can overeat because of ADHD, because you're trying to get the dopamine hit. Makes so much sense with both of us. So there's so many different reasons we overeat. But I just love it every time the discussion comes up, because we shut up the people that say, well, why don't you just control your eating? Because it's just not that simple.
Yeah,
it's not that simple.
I mean, one of the things she also looks at is finishing everything on your plate. And I mean, I remember I used to go down to my nan's for all of my holidays and what have you. And I mean, Nan wouldn't she, Mum? She would essentially, I'm not joking, pile a plate that high. My favourite was the fish. My favourite were her fried potatoes. And there was a lot of like mushy sort of vegetables. And she would say, eat everything on your plate. And so there was, in a weird way, it was kind of sanctioned binge eating. And just before I went to bed, every night, and she was doing it from a place of love.
Yeah, they believed that was the right thing to do.
She would give me, do you remember they still have them? 6 Hovis biscuits and 2 hot cross buns before bed. And so, of course...
But that's binge eating.
Yeah. When I look back, I realise that.
The thing is, I'm such a believer. If I had my time again with the girls, I look at this up on Instagram. There's loads of people that talk about it. Intuitive eating. Your grandmother taught you how to ignore your intuitive eating.
Right.
To force you to eat when you're not hungry. Give you huge treats when you're maybe feeling anxious. That is all disastrous. If your child, there's so many beautiful videos on Instagram of people saying, just putting the food, no emotion attached whatsoever. When the child finished, encouraging them to maybe try that, and then they're just taking the food, no recriminations. No, well, I cooked that for you and now you've not eaten it. All of that puts enormous pressure, and children learn at a very young age to be confused by the decisions that they're making about food. And they shouldn't be making decisions. It's intuition. So I now will not eat just because it's dinner time. If I'm not hungry, I won't do it. I only listen to when I'm really hungry, and then I eat.
Nicola Madrick said...
decades to do that.
Nicola Madrick says, Overeaters is a very good resource. You can join a group 24/7 anywhere around the world on Zoom, and you can go on there without showing your face if you want and just listen. Absolutely, the anonymity aspect of the 12-step program sometimes gets forgotten, and sometimes the online aspect of it really helps with that anonymity.
It really, really helped me for a long time.
OA.
It really... OA did. Overeaters Anonymous is a really important part in my life. It gave me an understanding of that. But now with my discovering more about my ADHD, I found another. So it's complicated. Food is unbelievably complicated. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. You know, my friend Jane Moore, Loose Woman, she just never, she just has what she wants. Looks at me and have that. She never thinks about, and I watch her and I'm so fascinated by that. I always say that to her. But with us, it's very complicated, isn't it?
So
we're bargaining, we're dealing with it, you know,
it's
we're
a
doing all
constant
sorts
whirring
of
sound
things.
in the head.
Yeah.
Milk honey, I do unfortunately think a lot of parents pass on their unhealthy eating habits to their children. However, even if parents try to avoid sugar, there's always a treats at school. I mean, again, Mum, you have an incredibly, I would say,
worst
chaotic
I've ever seen
relationship with food. It's ad hoc. It's, you know, at the wrong times that experts suggest this. It's the wrong type of food at the wrong time. Now, my mum comes from genes. My nan sustained herself to the age of 93 on a diet of Turkish delights, minstrels, and ready salted crisps. I mean, virtually, that was virtually all she ate, because any nice food she got when we took her out, she'd wrap up and give to a cat. Yeah,
but
you know, so in a sense, whether I've directly inherited that, there are great parallels between me and my mum and our eating, because we don't think about it.
And between us, we're fucked up.
Yeah. Natasha Tiramos, where is your comment, darling? Here we go. If we look at how a toddler eats, they eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. Unfortunately, all of these rules and regulations mess up our intuition around food.
Exactly. Yeah. And Murder, she wrote, it's very difficult to eat intuitively with ADHD, absolutely, because if you hyper-focus, you don't have hunger cues, and poor introspection means you might not always feel full even after you eat a lot. Exactly. Mark's ADHD plays out that he will forget to eat for the entire day. And, you know, if you were to come and live with us for a week, you'd go, God, that nag, you don't half nag him. But if I don't, he literally won't eat. And then he will binge all night. And that's classic ADHD, like, bro, because what happens is when you overeat as somebody with ADHD, and fast and a lot, you get this rush of dopamine, which helps you with your boredom, with your focus again, with all of that. So it's a big indicator of ADHD, that, isn't it?
Yeah, Shivy, you're absolutely right. I guess it was one of your nan's ways of showing how much she loved you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she
was just fucked up. They didn't know it was.
And she also knew that, you know, my mum's lifestyle was incredibly, let's say, bohemian. It was very sort of, you know, another word could be chaotic, but it was very bohemian. It was very unpredictable. It was up and down. And all she wanted to do was provide some consistency and sort of feed me up, fatten me up.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I have my thing of cooking something lovely for somebody, and for years I didn't even know that saying, oh, have a nice piece of cake was me just literally giving that person addictive behavior. And I have to control myself now that I've got the language with my kids, not to say, well, would you like a nice piece of cake? Would you like a chocolate? I try and make it, let's have a bit of chocolate, or let's never use it when somebody is emotionally struggling. If you, like they say, even if your child falls over and they scrape their knee, you don't say, oh, here's a sweetie to stop you crying. Think about that. Think about the pattern that's making in the head. Oh, sugar is what I go to when I'm stressed, when I'm unhappy, when I'm crying.
Yeah, some of the other things she says before we move on, she talks about how too much talk in family or upbringing about diet is bad. Too many observations about, you know, observing other people who are overweight and taking a sort of disparaging look. My nan was really bad about that, in terms of she would sort of look at someone who was overweight and make really negative sort of judgments, or, you know, and so, you know, that would make you feel self-aware and self-conscious. I mean, I personally didn't feel that too much. I mean,
but you know, I've seen that with other people, like dads, not realising, go, God, look at the size of that. Your daughter hears that and hears that is a truly, you know, it's a terrible thing. and that gives the whole body image. That it's so easy to just cause cracks in the way that somebody feels about themselves.
But you don't get me wrong, it's incredibly difficult because, in this age of mental health crises, issues, body images, body dysmorphia, all this kind of stuff, it's very hard to, make a joke. Because she suggests, let your children eat until they feel full. But, sometimes kids will say they're full when they're not full because they themselves are falling foul of, all of the kind of online stuff.
You know what I still get really confused about, though? If you have a child, because this is a friend of mine, right?
We are talking thrupples. Someone said, "Oh, we're not going to drop thrupples."
No, we're definitely talking about thrupples.
Definitely talking thrupples. Locally.
The thing that I like a friend of mine, her daughter has really put on weight, and she's putting more and more weight on, and it's so complicated. We talk about it all the time. We go, "Well, I don't know what you can say." It's like literally because you're not even supposed to say this is healthy food or that's not healthy food. Yeah. It's so complicated, isn't it? So I think we can all say, parents, pat yourself on the back. It's a fucker. The whole thing is a nightmare. You can think you can say this and then I don't know. It's an ongoing conversation, isn't it?
Just to say, someone asking where's the article, it's in the Telegraph, and the food therapist is Pixie Turner, and she's got a book coming out entitled Food Therapy.
I'm going to contact her actually and see if she'd do a live. Would you like that, guys? Yeah. So we can ask her some questions. I mean, she might say no. But what do you think? I think that'd be a good idea.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Okay. Sorry, I just need to check something in terms of, yes. So, thrupples. What is a thruple? Guys, I'm going to now ask you, because I'm sure it's not that hard to imagine what a thruple is, but would you consider being in a thruple?
Bloody tablet stuck again.
A thruple is essentially, as Nadia was saying on her on her live or on her story this morning, is it a threesome?
It's not a threesome.
Not necessarily.
Let's have a threesome. It's not that. It's yes, exactly, Sarah Fox. It's 3 people in a relationship. Now, am I right in saying that Uma? Well, this article, because this is
Una Healy.
Yeah,
Who's
is
Una
in a
Healy?
throuple. She's from. Oh, what's the band? Is it Girls Aloud?
Oh, is she? Yeah. The suggestion is Una Healy, Sean Osborne, and David Hay are bringing the term thruple to the mainstream consciousness. The trio are reportedly
that means we don't know that's true.
In a romantic partnership. But someone said, the CEO founder of the private therapy clinic, not in Cleveland, Ohio, says that in this day and age, people are far more open to alternative, non-conventional types of relationships. Thruples are becoming more and more popular. Now, this is interesting because we've spoken to a number of young people and attitudes to sex and relationships have changed massively from where we're at. Where, I think, we would probably most sort of generously call things, serial monogamy and stuff like that, or overlap, where you're...
She's lovely, that interviewed us.
Where you're leaving one relationship and going into another. But Erin Bullimore, I'm not in a thruple, but I am in a polyamorous relationship. Faith Goodman,
I remember you saying that, Erin.
Oh, yes, you did, yeah. Faith Goodman, too much jealousy. It's got to get complicated, hasn't it? It's got to get a little bit competitive.
Well, I think if you're looking from that, like you said, attitudes have changed so much.
They really have.
If you're looking through the lens of a traditional person, absolutely. I mean, there's no way I could do that. There's just no way. But that doesn't mean I can't imagine how some other people could.
Me Too says, why can't we love 2 people exactly the same? I mean, it's societal. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's cultural and societal rules and etiquette and norms and mores that kind of say to us that isn't right.
What I worry about with this, it's so often. How often is it 2 men? How often is it 2 men and 1 woman? It's
usually the other way around.
Like I've watched these programs in America, when these guys have multiple wives or whatever, and they never seem that happy, the women. They never seem as happy as the guy.
Well, it goes back to that thing that you've said about threesomes and swinging, is to what extent is any part of that sort of threesome, if you like, in a, is a reluctant partner and feels they have to kind of go there. Interestingly, I didn't create a holoc. Is that true? Carol Vorderman is in relationships with 5 men. I suppose that would be called a quipple. Is it quintet?
But is that no? There's a difference here, isn't it? It's about
one-on-one.
Yeah, because I don't know that stat about Carol, but you could have lots of different, boyfriends or lots of different girlfriends, and you're very open about that. Yeah, I'm not in a relationship with you. I date people, I see people, I sleep with other people. But a thruple is an actual relationship, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really interesting comment. Melanie Williams, absolutely not. I find a lot of these new alternate progressive relationships are patriarchy repackaged.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. You've put beautifully what I was struggling to say.
I think you're probably right. I mean, I think you are right.
Where is the power usually?
Yeah, exactly. And how many times is it a woman with 2 men, though, of course, potentially, though we don't know for sure Carol has 5. But again, as you say, they're all possibly individual relationships.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michu, for clarifying it's quintuple. Fantastic. Who takes out the bin, says Michu as well. Have you heard of the Sister Wives show? The guy, his name is Cody. His wives have all left but one.
Oh, have they? Have they? Yes. He was very sort of happy with himself in the episode I saw.
Henrietta Henson, one husband is too much. Natasha Tiramos, you'd need a pretty big bed. Nikki White, in theory,
what Nikki says.
In theory, I think it works, but I think it takes a particular type of person. Not everyone can share.
So here's the thing. So come on, let's all be really honest. So you meet somebody, you make a new friend at work, and they say, and you really like this person, you've known them for quite a while, and then they say, come over to dinner. You go over to dinner, and they're in a thruple.
What they are?
Yeah.
They're not asking you to be.
No. It's not a threesome. It's a relationship. It's a monogamous relationship.
Oh, right. So you sit down at a table
How
and there are 3 people.
Would you feel awkward?
I would.
I would.
Because I think they were going to say, can we have a, what is it?
But it would feel awkward because it's not the norm. You know what I mean? It would be like, I would be out of
Lee
kilter.
Doran, I'd absolutely shit myself and run out. Okay, here's something that happened to me many, many years ago. I remember...
You'd think swingers, says Mrs. Yeah, but exactly, what would we think? I would feel totally freaked out, but that is because I'm coming from a very, very conventional place. Whereas, as you started this, Mark, as you know, the young people we speak to says the norms are.
There's a lot more fluidity in relationships than what the notion.
We've got to be more fluid in the way that we think about
Are you
things.
exclusive? No, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I remember years ago, sort of flirting with someone, and we went back to her place, and he was there, and that was basically what she was. That was the gig, and I said, no.
Hang on a minute, what?
Yeah, no, I didn't do it. She said, "This is the gig."
Tell us exactly what happened.
Well, she literally took me into her flat.
So where had you met her?
Through work, and we've
Had
been working
you
together
had
for
a
a few
snog?
weeks. Yes, absolutely. That night, she said, "Oh, come back to my place." Went back to her place, went into her flat. She said, "Oh, come through to the bedroom." I mean, as any, I was just like, okay.
When she said, "Come back to the flat," did you know there was another man there?
No.
It was entrapment.
So I went, a little bit. And so I went there. She took me into the bedroom, and there was a guy.
Well, imagine that the other way around. If the man said that.
But hang on, when I think back to it, it's really bizarre. There was a man sitting in bed.
Naked?
Just lying in, I don't know, he had a duvet up. And she sat on the bed, and there was this very...
He's about to do a threesome, and he's holding his duvet
Well, he
up.
was
That's
at that
not
point.
going to go very well.
Yeah. And anyway, there was an incredibly awkward silence as she clambered onto the bed, and they both just kept looking at me. And they were clearly waiting for something.
So when you arrived at the place, did she offer you a drink or a cheese toasty or anything?
No,
or
she said, I'd like you to come through and meet my flatmate. Wasn't a flatmate. Wasn't a flatmate.
Was you tempted at all?
No, because if
it had been another girl, would you have been tempted?
Possibly. I'm being honest.
There you go, jackpot.
Yeah.
Would you?
Possibly. I mean, at the time, not now. I mean, at the time. I mean, God almighty, it was just chaos back there. Yeah. But I did leave. I said, no, I'm going to have to go.
Okay, we need more info. How did you leave?
I said, what did I say? I was quite drunk, but I said, I'm not entirely sure I can stay tonight, actually. I think I probably need to get home. and left. And she didn't talk to me again. In fact, I bumped into her in Soho.
Probably because she was a bit embarrassed.
About 2 years later.
I did think she was a bit silly in not giving you some bit of a heads up to check whether you might be a bit interested. Maybe you had been drunk and you didn't realise. Maybe she asked you the question and you said yes and you didn't know what the question was.
Yeah. Anyway, I was a bit like the budgie I had as a child, which my mum bought a female partner for, and the budgie, George, just ran along the bottom of the cave, petrified.
When you used to get drunk, you were a bit sort of like...
Oh.
You were a bit like, oh, what's happening next? You were a bit like that.
What's happening next?
Yeah, like I could imagine you sort of rolling around a bit and then going, oh, where are we?
Right, okay. There we go. I'm not.
It was quite charming.
I'm not going to. What do you mean? Why was it charming?
Well, no, because I'm not in this, like, when I was observing that, I wasn't thinking...
How to stay married coming up, I think. Heads up, Vicky Waiting, thank you for also getting the rather double meaning on that phrase.
What phrase?
Didn't they give you the heads up?
Oh.
Head up?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
So I just got to get a bit of pear because this fucking tablet is driving me
Okay, tell us about bumping into her in Soho, Reece Roberts. It was incredibly awkward. And she just said, oh, I hope you're all right. I said, no,
Did you
all
still
right.
fancy her?
No, I said, how's your boyfriend? And she just went, yeah, and just said, gotta go. And that was it.
Did you say, I'd like to come back to your flat one day if the fella wasn't there?
No, I was beyond that at that point. I was in a quintuple by that point.
I'm going to have to, Leah. I'll keep getting it stuck.
Right, final thing. Laughing gas. Has anyone come across laughing gas canisters? I come across them absolutely everywhere in London. These are the little... We used to call them at university, because they've been around for a while. These are the ones that go into the kind of high pressure sort of water fountains, and dentists use them. And
Oh, well, I thought it was just for... bakeries and bakeries.
Yeah, but they create a sort of high pressure. They're the little kind of, they've got names.
So you've probably seen them around in parks and stuff.
We called them whippets, and even at the bus stop, they're just there. Sometimes I pull out the drive, think, what the hell's that? And it's these little canister things. Now apparently they're the second most used sort of narcotic or drug.
Because they're legal.
Used by youngsters. After cannabis, laughing gas, as it's also called, is the most commonly used drug among 16 to 24-year-olds. And it runs the risk, essentially, as if I'm correct, an American student at college, we took them at college, and he said they effectively freeze part of the brain, which, let's face it, can't be good.
Cause brain damage,
so
they've
been linked to nerve damage, paralysis, or death. They're often used in products like whipped cream or for freezing chilling food. Also a painkiller for childbirth and dental treatment.
And they haven't been able to control young people using this because it's just so easy to buy.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember years ago somebody that we worked with. Do you remember she had like
Faith Goodwin? It's just like glue sniffing nowadays.
She said that she had a fake sort of like bakeries, didn't she, where she would order it.
That's
Do you remember that? And she would use this stuff all the time. And it's so bad for you.
Yeah. I mean, we used to do things like sniff Tipp-Ex in the back of class. I mean, it's kind of... But I'm amazed there's this organisation. There's an organisation called the British Compressed Gases Association. They want a ban on all consumer sales. And I think this is right. I once went to the park...
Hippie crack.
Hippie crack. I went to the park and there were literally about 600 of them. And sometimes in the summer and in lockdown, you'd go into the park and people would be inhaling stuff out of balloons and there'd be canisters everywhere. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, it's...
But we were talking to this group because every so often we get together a group of young people and we just talk to them, just sort of off the record, just to get like really good information on what's going on out there. And this NOS is just like
NOS.
most people have tried it. They won't have told their parents, but most people will have tried it at least once. So it's quite a good conversation. Not to have directly with your children, but just say, I was reading this article today. Did you know that it gives like brain damage? It does this, it does that.
Wow, look, Debbie O'Keefe, there's always a pile of them outside the local primary school.
Yeah, that you do see piles because the high is very quick, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very short. I
think it's like
remember
seconds, but it's very cheap.
I mean, I can talk about it because I was in the first year of university. Someone brought it in. I was in a room. I was in a room with two incredibly cool kind of Americans. We were watching Super Bowl. someone came in and said, try this Whippet, did it. My then girlfriend at the time literally stormed out and said, you're an absolute effing moron for doing that. It freezes your brain.
Did you stick it up your nose?
No, I inhaled it. But all I remember was this. It was like this, literally for about 20 seconds, and then it went.
That's it. That's what you get out of it.
So anyway, keep an eye on that, but also hopefully
Thank you,
from
that
formal,
makes us feel good.
Sorry, from formal sort of shops and what have you, they want to try and ban this, and the government's looking into potentially introducing this ban.
How do they
April.
use them? People are asking.
Well, I used it out of a water siphon of some form. You sort of locked it into something and. Yeah, I think it's some kind of pressured. But I mean, I don't see youngsters walking around with water siphons, to be honest with you. So is the balloon thing a thing? How do you access
balloons.
it? Yeah, but how do you access the...
I don't know.
How do you get it to come out of the... What does the pod go into? I think, mind you, there are these little things. But anyway, so that's good. But as someone just said, they'll order it online.
Here's the thing, it's so easy to get. There's no restrictions on it. So that's why kids do it, because it's easy and it's cheap and it's... I think everybody laughs and it's like... But they probably, because it's so quick and because they laugh, they've probably got no idea how dangerous it is. So it's worth having a...
All right, guys. Well, look, have a lovely day. Sorry for the late start.
And yesterday we put up our podcast, How to Stay Married So Far, all about arguments. Lots of people have said they really loved it.
Well,
it's
not really
very
about arguments.
honest.
It's about discovering that there are still things that one has to work on.
But also we sort of break down on how to avoid a bit of an argument. Yeah.